Today is Book Review Sunday, and last week I read two books, and I'm really excited to review these ones because both of them got 5 stars from me. So I lost my second screen, and so I'm going to be a little less professional with my screen sharing today since I have to. I can't jump around between two screens, but that's okay. Okay, so the first book is The King's Curse by Philippa Gregory. And finally, reading this book was literally the end of an era for me because there are at least 9 books in this series, and it has taken me 15 years to read them. Uh, some of them weren't completed when I started, which would be why but also when I first started reading Philippa Gregory, I was in high school and then became a poor, starving college student, and her books can be pricey. And so it just simply took me time to acquire them and then read them. So, like I said in my intro, I give The King's Curse 5 stars. And this is a form of historical fiction. Specifically, this one is real people and real events. So, from my point of view, there are 3 main pathways a historical fiction story can go. The first pathway is what this is. The time is real. Well, I guess in any historical fiction, the time is going to be real, which is why it's historical. The time is real, the place is real, the events are real, the people are real. And this is my favorite form of historical fiction. Then there's the time and place and events are real, but the characters are fictional. So, to give you an example, that would be a lot of World War II stories, movies, um, where we're in World War II, but our characters are fictional. So, Pearl Harbor, Fury, that would be that pathway of historical fiction. And then the third pathway for historical fiction is the time is real. Sometimes the place is real, sometimes the events are real, but the characters most definitely are not. And that is where stories like Bridgerton fall. So, like I said, my very favorite is that first one where everything is based off of something or someone real. And The King's Curse takes place in Tudor era England, which is the time period that I chose to focus on in my history degree in college, which is probably why I love this book so much. And our main character is considered a background historical figure. So our main character is Margaret Plantagenet de la Pole, and she lived a very long life, and she lived under 4 different kings of England. The first king of England for her was Edward IV, and he was her uncle. Her father was George, Duke of Clarence, and her father was actually executed by the king for treason. The second king that she lived under was King Richard III, who was also her uncle. And the third king she lived under was Henry VII. And so, from her point of view, the Tudor family are usurpers, they are conquerors, they are the bad guys because they tore her family down from the throne. And then the fourth and final king during her lifetime was the famed and notorious Henry VIII. And so she does exist enough in the history books for us to know a lot about her, but she still is kind of a background figure. Her while she was a part of the royal family, she's not of a direct line. Um, her uncle sat on the throne, her father never did. And then her cousin married Henry VII. And so she's related to the Tudors through marriage, but she's always off to the side throughout her whole life. And for the different fictional books and TV shows and movies that her character is in, she's kind of painted as someone who's okay with that because she doesn't want to end up in the tower and she doesn't want to end up with her head off of her body, which is what happened to her father and her brother. And unfortunately, she is going to end up going in their footsteps through no fault of her own. And I don't consider that a spoiler because it already happened several hundred years ago. A quick Google search will tell you what happened to the real life Margaret Pole. And Philippa Gregory does this a lot, and I love it. A lot of her books are from background characters, and all of her books, with the exception of some of her um, other historical fictions where the characters are also fictional, most of her main characters are women because Philippa Gregory wants to give a voice to these historical women whose stories were written by men and try to guess, what were they really thinking? What were their reasons for the things that they did? It's got to be more than just, oh, they were perfectly pious or they were too ambitious kind of a thing. And so I really like, even if she gets accused of getting things wrong a lot. And there are some things that she changes on purpose, and some of them I understand why she did that for the purpose of a fictional book. And then there are some changes that I very strongly disagree with, but I still respect her for it because she's just simply trying to give a different perspective to something that we don't have all of the information for. And last, I really appreciated that Miss Gregory painted Margaret as flawed and human, especially because historically Margaret is viewed as one of the good guys because she stood by Catherine of Aragon's side. She stood by Princess Mary's side during the whole Anne Boleyn drama, during the religious changes going on in England at the time. And so she's viewed as a savior for uh, Princess Mary and any other Catholics living in England at the time. And she did do that. That is true. But she still made mistakes in other aspects of her life. And that's brought to light in the book. And it's done in a way to just be like, hey, she was living in a difficult time and she had to make the choices that she thought was best for her and her family. So this was, like I said, an end of an era reading. Finishing it was bittersweet, and I'm ready to move on to my next historical fiction series. So I'd love some recommendations in the comments. What is your favorite historical fiction book or series? The second book I finished last week is the Alpha Underground Trilogy, Book 2 by Amy Easterling. And if you watched last week's episode, you know that I gave book 1 3 stars, which does mean I like it, but 3 stars is also the lowest star rating that I will publicly review. And the second book, I give 5 stars to. The second book was so much better, leaps and bounds improvement. So first, right off the bat, our powerful and confident Fen has returned, and she is going on her own adventure with her mate who she has mostly accepted. She's obviously traveling with him, and they are rescuing werewolves who have been sold to humans as pets. This second book also surrounds a mother-daughter relationship plot. Fen was abandoned by her mom when she was 9 years old, and her former alpha has reached out to her saying that he has a letter from her mom. Her mom is inviting her to her father's funeral. Fenn's mate, Hunter, really wants her to go, and she shows up to the funeral and is unable to actually go. She walks up and then turns around and leaves. She can't do it. And but her mom is going to get placed in her path again, and she and her mom are going to have to work out their past hurts and traumas. And with that plot is interconnected with her hunter, her mate, Hunter, his name is Hunter, um, not being your typical alpha. I mean, he is, but he's teachable. And he's going to allow Finn to help him change and improve and become a better mate. And what happens is he is so angry at her for skipping out on her father's funeral and refusing to talk to her mom that he abandons her in the middle of the night and leaves her with a car and a cell phone number. And that cell phone number goes to his secretary, who refuses to give him the phone because she has been given orders not to. And so the message essentially is, I'm not going to talk to you until you fix things with your mom. And within a few chapters, Hunter realizes that was the wrong thing to do, and he and Finn talk, and she lays it into him. She says, yes, I'm with my mom now, and I am working on things with her, but you forcing me into this by abandoning me was the wrong way to go about this. And he acknowledges that and he apologizes, and they both agree that from here on out, we're going to make decisions together. And the last thing that I really enjoyed about this book is both Finn and the author learned from their mistakes from book one. Finn is not going to be so trusting of every single person who crosses her path like she was in the first book, which is going to make things difficult for the villain, which is a good thing. And with that, the author did not make the villain so obvious. I had no idea who the villain was until the very, very end when his face was revealed. And that made me so, so happy. So if you love historical fiction and you, for some reason, haven't checked out Philippa Gregory, I highly recommend her books, especially her Plantagenet and Tudor era books. I love them, and I will always, always recommend them when it comes to historical fiction. If you also like werewolves and romance, check out the Alpha Underground Trilogy by Amy Easterling, and I will see you next Sunday.